This is the Week in Sustainability from Sustain.Life. It's where our team of sustainability experts and practitioners share commentary to keep you up to date on developing stories and news.
Hi, I'm Hannah Soxke, a sustainability analyst at Sustain.Life, and we've got two stories for you this week. So, a new assessment was just published about the record shattering heat that we all experienced last year. And then I'll cover a more recently centered relationship between climate change and increasing flight turbulence. So, we'll start with the more expected realities of climate change. On Tuesday of this week, the Red Cross Red Crescent Climate Center, along with World Weather Attribution and Climate Central, published an assessment of the past year's record breaking heat. The key point there is all across the globe, the average person experienced 26 more days of abnormally high heat than they would have without a warming planet. And record numbers of extreme heat waves put billions of people at risk. The report concludes human-induced climate change made all of these events twice as likely compared to pre-industrial patterns. And something that this report pauses to point out that I really appreciate about the publication is that they're discussing what makes heat and extreme heat events unique. So unlike things like storms and like droughts, many of us and typical societal routines tend to continue under warmer conditions, and the line of when we are officially in danger is a little bit blurry. So reactions like declaring a state of emergency or requesting humanitarian aid are much less common responses in response to heat than in other events. This is a little bit paradoxical because extreme heat events are much more deadly than many other events. Everyone is exposed to some degree of risk, but there are specific groups to keep your eyes on here. So adjusting your body temperature and adjusting to huge changes in temperature, it's a much more challenging task for people that are over 65 and under 5 years old. Seniors and children require a little bit more attention to keep cool. Another really huge group that I think about when talking about extreme heat are outdoor workers. Just like declaring a state of emergency is a rare response to heat, declaring it too hot to go to work on any given day is nearly unheard of. And to layer on top of that, depending on the regulations in any given country or state, these workers might not have consistent or dependable access to water or shade during their day. So 26 extra days of heat poses a huge threat to hospitals and emergency services that might not be prepared for the influx, but 26 is just the average. Countries like Suriname, Ecuador, and Guyana topped the charts. They experienced nearly 180 additional days of extreme heat. And beyond risk to individual health, these hotter days increase wildfire probability. They often damage infrastructure and cause blackouts. They also damage agricultural production. Each of these has its own arm of short-term and long-term consequences. So it's a huge system dynamic change to have nearly half of your year hotter than you would expected it to be maybe 20 years ago. And I think a lot of climate-minded people are probably asking next, wouldn't we expect La Niña to reverse some of this warming? And yes, we are shifting into a La Niña phase that should mean a little bit of cooling, but we're clearly entering an era where historic patterns are less grounded. We can see now that relying on historic patterns for future prediction is just not reflective of what we're seeing. So the heat from this past year is still affecting present weather, and scientists are not entirely confident that La Niña will meaningfully reduce temperatures. La Niña also brings on more risk. So La Niña's lower wind shear paired with warmer air and ocean temperatures bring in above normal storm season prediction to areas like the Caribbean and the Atlantic. And it's a lot of information. So, what are the solutions here? If you live somewhere that is experiencing extreme heat, there are things that you can do to prepare, stay hydrated, potentially invest in some extra fans, insulate your home, darken your windows. But at a community level, a lot of cities are adopting a city heat action plan. Sometimes this is housed within a larger climate action plan, but not always. Occupational regulations change. Guidance on building materials might be altered. electricity and water infrastructure investments are made, not always under the guise of climate adaptation, and much more, the language is not always climate specific. So facing hotter days is probably one of the most obvious things that we can expect once you learn about climate change. Um, and we have answers. We understand the steps that need to be taken. Implementation is coming. But there are also huge swaths of consequences of climate change that are less obvious and certainly less talked about, like flight turbulence. Flight turbulence has made global headlines this week, and this year has seen way more instances of flight turbulence than prior. But maybe surprisingly, climate change is related to this uptick. So, US Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg has linked the rising flight turbulence to climate change. And during a CBS interview, Buttigieg noted that turbulence is expected to increasingly affect travelers domestically and internationally. Buttigieg explained that turbulence is just an added item on the long list of ways in which the climate change is impacting transportation. We've seen heat waves and storms, stalled transit systems, and now we're seeing, in comparison to last year, a 15% increase in turbulence. On top of that 15% increase in comparison to last year, a study in Geophysical Research Letters reported that there's been a 55% increase in severe clear air turbulence over the North Atlantic between 1979 and 2020. And clear air turbulence is a specific kind of turbulence that's not directly related to more predictable aspects, like storms. Turbulence is the experience of flying through changes in wind speeds that occur at different heights. Wind shear can be caused by strong winds near airports, airflows over mountains, storm clouds, edges of jet streams, and then there's this clear air turbulence, which is a little bit less predictable. And this is exactly where climate change plays a role. So jet streams are formed when warm air and cold air masses meet, and climate change has increased temperature differences between those two masses. So the jet streams are becoming much more erratic. So the researchers who published in Geophysical Research Letters call out that the unpredictability of jet stream changes is what's making turbulence more difficult to prepare for and more severe when encountered. This isn't confirmed yet, but it seems likely that this less predictable turbulence is part of the cause of the London to Singapore flight that experienced a 1,800-meter drop last Monday. Airlines are consistently improving their prediction models to prevent dangerous experiences, but the highest technology solutions are too expensive for widespread use. So for now, we're stuck in this spot where the link between turbulence and climate change is clear, and air travel safety policies need to catch up. So thank you so much for joining the Week in Sustainability, and we will see you next week.
Sustain.Life is the leading and most comprehensive sustainability software on the market. To learn how we can help your company measure its emissions and take climate action, go to Sustain.Life. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this show on our YouTube channel or your favorite podcast platform. Thanks for tuning in. See you next week.